Hello. Hello. Hello, welcome. It's good to see so many faces in the room. We're going to be talking about Visualforce today in Lightning Experience. We're going to get through a little bit of housekeeping first, so I'm sure you've seen this slide many times. This is the forward-looking statement slide or the safe harbor slide. Basically means when you're making purchasing decisions, make those decisions based on what's currently available in the product and not what you might hear today or anywhere in the conference. Right. So I'm assuming everyone in the room is using Visualforce. Perhaps not in Lightning Experience yet, mostly in Classic, or maybe a little bit in Lightning Experience, having issues with Lightning Experience. So we're going to talk about Visualforce and making Visualforce work better and look better in Lightning Experience. So I'm Tim Dion. I'm a software engineer at Salesforce. In my 6th year at Salesforce, I've worked primarily on Visualforce. I started on a team called CCE, Customer Centric Engineering, which was a team that worked specifically on production issues that customers were having that needed engineering attention. And my area of focus was Visualforce, and now I'm on the Scrum team for Visualforce, actually on a specialized integration team with Lightning for Visualforce. I've got Mike Sen with me here, and Akshitha Rao here. Mike's an engineer on the Visualforce team, and Akshitha is the PM. All right, let's get into it. So here's the agenda. We're going to talk about how Visualforce is used. We're going to talk about high-level considerations for Visualforce in Lightning Experience. We're going to look at and talk about the Lightning Experience Readiness Report. We're going to dive into techniques for fixing pages that don't work, and then techniques for fixing the look and feel of your pages in Lightning Experience. We're going to talk about some bonus features that you get with Visualforce that can be used also in Lightning Experience. And then we're going to do 2 pretty cool demos. We're going to demo a new feature called Lightning Automatic Styling for Visualforce, which I'll talk about a little bit later. We're going to demo something called Lightning Components for Visualforce, or LC for VF, and drill down on pagination, one of the bonus features. So I'm going to combine those together in that demo. And we'll talk about some known issues. All right, so how is Visualforce used? I say it's used everywhere, and well, I think it's used everywhere. I've listed, certainly not an exhaustive list of places where Visualforce is used, and I've ranked it in the way that I've seen Visualforce used. Of course, your mileage will vary based on the needs of your organization, but so we got tab landing page, so if you can create a Visualforce page and have it be your landing page for a tab. You can use an actual Visualforce tab. You can also have it be the landing page of a web tab. Action overrides is a huge use of Visualforce. So your standard and custom objects have new, edit, view actions, and you can override the standard views with a Visualforce page. You can also create a custom button or custom action and lightning action for an object. You can embed pages in a page layout. You can also embed them as a component in a Lightning page. So if you've used Lightning App Builder, you can put Visualforce on a Lightning page. You can also host a Lightning component with Visualforce. So that's LC for VF. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And then a site and community page. And again, I've ranked these in the order that I've seen them, but I think that it really depends on the organization. All right, so when thinking about Visualforce in Lightning Experience, I've got 4 things I've listed here. I don't believe these are really ranked. I just put them sort of in the way they came off my head, but certainly, does your page function in Lightning Experience? That's a huge one, right? Initially, when you want to use a page in Lightning Experience, if it doesn't function, then you need to take action immediately. So that means, does it render correctly? Do all your controls render? Do your forms render? Do the buttons do what you expect them to do? Things like that. And then navigation. Navigation is a huge piece in Lightning Experience, for Visualforce and Lightning Experience, because of the way the Visualforce page is contained in the main Lightning page. So does it navigate right? So if you've got a wizard, if you click the next button, does it navigate to the right place? Or if you click the save button, do you navigate to the place you expect to go? Another one is, do your Lightning Experience views get updated when you dismiss or save a Visualforce page? So if you've got an override, let's say, and you change some data and you click the save button, and then the window disappears or it's dismissed, and then you go back to your Lightning page, like a view page for a record. Are those changes you made, are they reflected in the view? They certainly are in the back end, but the question is, are they reflected in the view after you dismiss that window? And then finally, and certainly not the least important, but does your page look consistent in Lightning Experience? I remember the first time I saw a Visualforce page in Lightning Experience, and honestly, it kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. It just doesn't, the styles do not match between Classic and Lightning Experience. And it's a kind of a big deal. So and that's why I'm really excited to announce, maybe some of you have used this already, there's a beta feature called Lightning Automatic Styles for Visualforce pages the Visualforce team worked on. It's pretty awesome. In fact, there's a breakout session at 11 that's going to drill down on this feature even more if you want to get more information about it. This will be GA'd in Summer 18, which is the next release. Okay, so the Lightning Readiness Report is something you can start from setup in Classic. And it's there. And I'm going to show it to you. I've got to toggle my mirror here. Here we go. For some reason, it keeps wanting to turn that off. Can you see? Yes. All right. So here's my org that I'm working in, and I'm in Classic. You can see, and I'm in Setup. So if you click on the left here, if you click on the Get Started button for Lightning Experience Migration Assistant, the first tab is Learn. So you got the Learn tab, and there's a lot of good information here. But if you go to the next tab, there's a Check Readiness tab. And then there's a Check Readiness button here. I'm not going to click the button now. How many people have actually used the Lightning Readiness Report? Oh, wow. Okay, great. So when you click this button, you'll get an email, a detailed Lightning Readiness Report about your entire organization. And in that report, there will be a Visualforce section. But it doesn't have all the information you need yet. You actually have to click one more button. So inside that report, there's a chance to click another button and get a detailed Visualforce readiness report for Lightning Experience, and that's what you'll want to do. Okay. All right. So when that report comes, that will be emailed to the same email address. So when you get that, you'll have lots of interesting and vital information about your Visualforce pages. And not just all your Visualforce pages, they'll be ranked. So as of 2 or 3 releases ago, I believe, we help you collect data about your Visualforce page usages. So this report will be ranked with the most used Visualforce pages at the top. So you'll see, for a Visualforce page that gets used the most, you'll see the information here. So you'll get warnings, and you'll get errors. Here's just a screenshot of a report that I ran a few months ago on one of my organizations. And you can see there's some warnings about using S-Force.1, a JavaScript object. There's an error about using the window object in your JavaScript. It was a big no-no, and we'll talk a lot about that later in the presentation. So you don't want to use the window object, certainly not for navigational reasons. And then there's another warning here about custom.js. So I would definitely run the readiness report and drill down on that Visualforce readiness report and get that detailed information so you can start thinking about the things you might need to pay attention to. All right, so what will just work? I say most things will. It really depends, again, on your organization and how customized your Visualforce pages are. But I've listed some things that I think should just work. So simple pages that use the standard controller, those should generally work. Now, this is barring look and feel. We're not talking about that yet. This is more talking about functional aspect of a page. Pages that use custom HTML as opposed to built-in Visualforce components. I've seen lots of customers write Visualforce pages that just use HTML and not that much Visualforce. So they're just the apex page element, and then you've got a bunch of HTML in there. Obviously, that'll work. Pages with little or no JavaScript, this is kind of vague. Certainly, if you have no JavaScript, then you won't have a problem. So the word little kind of means small amount and not complex. You could have a small amount of JavaScript that's very complex and does navigational things that you might have an issue with, but generally speaking, you have little and not complex or no JavaScript. It should just work. Pages that navigate using page reference, and when I say page reference here, I mean the apex page reference. If you have a controller, custom controller or a controller extension, and you navigate by returning apex page references, that should work. Or if you're using the S-Force.1 API in your JavaScript to navigate in Lightning Experience. And then obviously pages that don't use unsupported components. There's a link at the end of the slide there. There are a handful of unsupported components, certainly in the S1 mobile app. And I believe enhanced list is also a component that isn't fully supported in Lightning Experience Desktop. All right. So techniques for fixing these pages that don't work. Well, first you got to figure out what's not working, and that can be challenging with Lightning Experience. So the best way to do that is to use developer tools for the browser that you're using. All modern browsers and the browsers that we support have developer tools. I have found that they're not all created equally. So if you're reproducing an issue in your favorite browser and you like that developer tools, make sure you use that one. Sometimes issues are only reproducible in certain browsers, and then you'll be forced to use the developer tools for that browser. I like to look at the JavaScript console first. Lightning Experience is heavy on the JavaScript side. So you want to look in the JavaScript console first if something's not working properly. Look for any error messages. They're in red, obviously, and try to understand what they're saying. They'll put stack traces in there. You can kind of get an idea for what might be going on with your page. Look at the network tab. The network tab shows all the requests and responses that are made, and there's a lot more in Lightning Experience than in Classic. In Classic, you click on a link and you pretty much normally get 1, maybe 2 requests, but Lightning Experience is different, so you see a lot of requests and responses. So check and see if there's any error responses. You'll see red. Those will be red too. So navigation constructs. Like I said before, you want to replace any occurrences of window.location or window.location.href, especially if you're changing it, with the Salesforce.1 APIs when they're present. So the S-Force.1 API is present when you're in Lightning Experience. It is not present in Classic. So you can't just change it for your page if you want your page to work between Classic and Lightning Experience. So I'll show you how to create a switch for that later if you do want to use your pages in both. So cross-origin issues. Visualforce is hosted in an iframe in Lightning Experience, and it is hosted in its own domain, a Visualforce domain, so it's the force.com domain. The main page is hosted in the Lightning domain. So there can be cross-origin issues. So you're going to want to look for JavaScript code in your page that assumes complete control over the entire, we call it the entire DOM, or the top window object, because that's not going to work anymore. So you have to be careful for that. You'll see cross-origin issues in the console. And then I was saying there's some unsupported components. You also might just have, you might have a Visualforce component or just have a grouping of components in your page that don't really function right in Lightning Experience. So for those kinds of things, you could consider porting them to a Lightning component. So right, Lightning component is the new development sort of platform for Lightning Experience. So you can take a piece of your page. I'm going to show you that in a second. You can take a piece of your page that may not be functioning properly and port it to Lightning component and then host it inside your Visualforce page. So you don't have to take the whole Visualforce page to a Lightning component all in one fell swoop, which is sometimes non-trivial. Here it is. So enter Lightning components for Visualforce. This is based on a technology called Lightning Out. And the cool thing about it, I think, is that you can put your Lightning component, like I said, inside, beside, and inside of the rest of your page with your HTML components, with your other Visualforce components. So I'll dissect this very quickly, and then I'll show you an actual example. But you can see here, there's an Apex include Lightning element that brings in the libraries, the JavaScript libraries you're going to need to do Lightning Out. And then I've got this empty div. You see it's got an ID of Lightning table. And then I've got some JavaScript down here, and the top JavaScript isn't really all that important. Well, it's important for this case, but the really important thing is you have an app. So if you want to create a Lightning component and use it in your Visualforce page, you have to create an app first called Lightning App. You do that with a developer console. And this $lightning.use, and you specify your app, and I'm going to show you an application that I wrote in a second. So you're going to use this application. The application is going to specify the components that you're going to want to use in your Lightning component. Obviously your component, and then any of the others that one's using. And then create component, and then the name of your component. And then you're passing in this case, I'm passing in an accounts list, and then I'm passing in the ID of that div where I want to insert that content. So basically, when this page renders, that empty div is going to become a Lightning component. It's going to sit inside that Visualforce page that way. Okay, and just another note, and to highlight JavaScript navigation, and to show you the switch, and introduce actually a new feature in the next release. Again, in Lightning Experience, Visualforce page is part of the bigger page. It's in a different domain. And you can't say window.location equals. It's just not going to behave the way you want it to behave. You want to navigate around the entire application. But you do need to switch it if you're going to host your page, or you're going to have your page served in both experiences. So here's a way to switch it. So it used to be quite difficult to switch in JavaScript or to detect what environment you're in, what experience you're in. But there's a new UI theme global. So you can call UI theme.getUItheme, and that will give you the theme. The way the themes work in Salesforce is theme 3 is classic. Theme 4D, theme 4T are Lightning experience. T is mobile, touch, and D is desktop. So the way this works is if UI theme starts with theme 4 is what I've done here. So if the index of theme 4 equals 0, then I know I'm in Lightning experience. If I'm going to navigate, I'm going to use sforce.1 navigate to URL instead of window.location equals. But if I'm not in Lightning experience, then I want to just go ahead and set window.location because I want this to work in classic as well. All right, so techniques for fixing look and feel, again, which I think is very important in the pages. And I introduced, or I talked about this new feature, automatic lightning styles for Visualforce. It is pretty simple to use. There's a new attribute on your Apex page element called lightning style sheets. It defaults to false, so if your pages don't have that attribute, then it'll just be false. So you set it to true, or you add the attribute and you set it to true, and you get a whole lot, and I'll show you, a whole lot of cool styling changes for your Visualforce pages basically for free. I wanted to call out that it only works on Visualforce components, like Apex components. If you've got divs or spans or unordered lists or anything like that in there, it's not going to style them at all. It's just going to style the Apex namespace components. And then, obviously, another way to fix look and feel is to convert your page to a Lightning component. But again, that's non-trivial for very complex Visualforce pages. But you can, like I said earlier, you take pieces of the page, convert them to Lightning components, and then you will get the styling that way too for those pieces. All right, so here's some before and afters. You can see that links, buttons, the arrows, and tabs look totally different. And this is just by turning on that attribute on the page. Oh, sorry. Got it. All right. Here's the accordion, which is, I think is pretty dramatic. The input-output. You can see the required field. Oh, you just look at the left side. It just looks very classic, and nothing wrong with it. You can see how sticking that inside your Lightning experience tabs, your brand new Lightning experience would kind of stick out. Like the required bars are now turned into stars. Everything looks kind of more modern. This is a good one, to the chatter feed. Hope it's easy to see. So you can see the tabs along the top of the feed look like Lightning. I mean, it'd be hard pressed to say this was a Visualforce page. And then the feed itself, the links, comment and like, everything just looks a little more modern and very Lightning. This is one of my favorites. So this is a list view in Classic. It's too bad I don't have the tabs on here. But this one has the tabs. So here it is. You just turn on that. You've got a list view page, and you turn on Lightning Automatic Styles, and it just looks like Lightning to me. It doesn't even look like it's a Visualforce page. And you can see, if the tabs were on that previous page, you kind of get a better feel for how sort of misplaced or out of place that page would look. And this is the page, that last page that we were looking at with the lists in it. The only thing we did is I added that Lightning style sheets equals true up there. All right, so I mentioned there's some bonus features with Visualforce. I want to touch on a few of them now. Visualforce has something called a standard set controller, and I'm going to demonstrate that as well. So you get pagination for free. So you get things like the first, next, previous, last actions. Those come for free. So you can paginate through a list of objects using the standard set controller, and that will work inside Lightning Experience as well if you use a Lightning component. So I'm going to demonstrate using pagination with a Lightning component. Read-only mode, I don't know how many people use Visualforce in read-only mode, but with read-only mode, if you're not going to be making any changes, or we call it DML, there's a record limit per request, and that's raised to 1 million. So you work with a lot of records if you use a Visualforce page in read-only mode. And you also get API access. So the Visualforce session has access to the API, the REST API. So that's kind of a neat feature to be able to use the API from your Visualforce page. And here's my quote. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. My dad said this to me always, and I thought it was his quote. But apparently it's ancient. It's an ancient quote. It has always held true to me, and I say it to my kids all the time. But there's an exception. This is the one exception I found. So I believe Lightning Automatic Styles for Visualforce is really, it does seem too good to be true. You just want to like set an attribute, and you just get a bunch of stuff for free. And it does work that way. All right. So I'm going to demo, am I still on? Yeah. I'm going to demo Lightning Automatic Styles for Visualforce, and then I'm going to jump over to an LC for VF demo. I need to re-mirror this. Okay. First thing I have to do is I have to switch to Lightning Experience. Okay, so here I am. Now I'm going to go to my developer console. Here's that same page we were just looking at. I'm going to set this to false, which should be the same thing as not having it there. Just for sake of time, I'm just going to set it to false. And then I've got a tab set up for that page. Ew. Right? And so now you see the header. See, I was saving that for the demo. So you can see the header, and like it looks so beautiful on the top. And then I don't want to say it doesn't look beautiful. I'm going to say it looks very different. So if I go back and I set this to true, and then I just load this again, right? I mean, it looks so much better. And it was, the amount of work that went into this, and well, Mike could comment on that, but the amount of work that must have gone into this is an amazing feature, and you do get so much for just changing one attribute or adding an attribute to your pages. And that's such a simple demo too. So now we're going to move on to something that's not quite as simple. I'm going to look at a page here. So I'm going to collapse the styles. I don't think that they're super important for the actual functionality of the page. So I've got a page here, right? And I don't know how many people have used the standard set controller, but the way you activate standard set controller on a standard controller page, so I'm using the account standard controller, but I set an attribute called record set var, and I just assign it a value. In this case, I've assigned it accounts because that makes sense because it's an account standard controller. By doing this, I'm no longer using a standard controller, I'm using a standard set controller. So I can now iterate that accounts variable inside my page, and I get things like I said, I've got the first. So I've got first, previous, next, and last buttons, and the magic is the standard set controller has a first action. So I just say action equals, bracket bang first, and I get that for free. So I can do first, next, last, previous. I'm using an extension here. In my extension, only reason I created an extension is so I could set the page size. So inside here, I'm saying for my controller, standard set controller, just set page size to 5 because the default was too large, and I just felt like I wanted to set it down. So that's how you can change the page size. So these are my buttons, and then I've got this container, this account container. And you notice I've got an apex repeat. So this is all Visualforce at this point. So I've got an apex repeat. I'm iterating my accounts, and inside here I've got an empty div. And I've assigned it an ID, and it's the ID of the account that I'm iterating. And I've also given it a class, and I gave it a class so that I could iterate the class in the JavaScript, so I could basically insert the Lightning component into each one of these empty divs. And that's where this is what happens down here. This is just straight JavaScript. I'm just getting all the accounts by their class, and then I'm iterating them, passing in the element, and I'm doing the same thing we saw earlier. So I'm saying Lightning use, and I'm going to show you the app in a second, and I'm going to create an account card component, passing in the account ID and the element so it knows where to put it. So I'll get all my cards in these empty divs. So the empty divs will become actual cards. So let's look at the app. Super simple. So this is This is an OR app, or sorry, this is a Lightning application, or is the namespace. And you see I'm extending something called Lightning:out app. That's what tells it that it's going to be leveraging Lightning out, so I can insert it inside a Visualforce page. And then I just say I'm going to be using obviously my component, account card, and I'm going to show you that. And I'm also using something called Lightning Data Service, and that's what this is. There may be sessions about Lightning Data Service. I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's a way to basically get data, like a record data, into your component without using Apex. A little cleaner. All right, now let's look at my component. You can see I've got an attribute, which is the account ID. That's the one that I'm going to be using to load the account into. This is the record data, so this is Lightning Data Service. I really we won't worry about that right now, but basically what it's doing is it's saying, given this account ID, I want the name and description fields. I'm going to use those in this component, and that's all it's saying, really. So then I've got a Lightning card, which is a standard component that you can use in your Lightning components, and I'm passing in the name as the title. I'm passing in an edit button. It's not going to do anything, but I created an action button called edit, and then I've got the description as the main body of the card. So that's what's going to happen when I go here to account. Oh, actually, I wanted to make sure I did one thing. I'm also combining. Oh, good. So Lightning style sheets is false. So I'm going to keep that false for now. So we aren't doing that cool switch yet, but we're going to. All right, so here we go. So I've got my cards. Visualforce got all the data for me. Well, it got the IDs for me, and it gives me the pagination. So all these buttons like I can just go next, get the next list. I can go last. I can go first. That all comes for free with Visualforce, which is pretty cool. But the links look pretty bad, in my opinion. It's a pretty simple page, and I also think the header looks very sort of classic-y. So I can kind of combine what I've done. I've got like a page with some Lightning component in it, and I'm going to turn on Lightning style sheets now at the same time. And now it looks a little more Lightning. This is a Lightning style header. These are Lightning styled links, command links. So you can combine things. You can combine Lightning components inside your Visualforce page. And then you can obviously use the Lightning automatic styles to dramatically change the way your pages look and function, obviously. That's still up there, huh? I'm going to close this now. Okay. All right. Okay, obviously there are some known issues. We have a known issues database. You can just Google. I don't know if it's. I don't know the exact URL for known issues. You can Google Salesforce known issues. One of the biggest issues, and one of the issues that my current team worked on, was navigation. So there are lots of navigation issues in Lightning Experience, like standard navigation, not just with your JavaScript. Like clicking save on a Visualforce page will take you to the home page instead of like back to like the record you were working on, for example. Sometimes you get a blank page. Nobody likes that. So my team, the integration team, worked very hard on these navigation issues. So safe harbor, these are fixed in Summer 18, which is great because it was a lot of work and it was a really important feature looking at the number of people reporting these issues. Back button is still another issue that is a shared issue with a couple teams, but we are aware of it. We're working on it. So when you're in Lightning Experience, you click the back button, you kind of expect to go back. But in an app like Lightning, it doesn't actually always go back. Sometimes you go to a blank page, and that's not good. I've just listed a couple others here. Custom buttons set to display in a new window don't really work right in Lightning Experience. It's kind of weird to think about a new window in Lightning Experience when you click on a button because Lightning Experience doesn't really use tabs that way. Redirection with a page reference, an Apex page reference, and you're also using Ajax re-render. There's issues around that. And then, like I said earlier, sometimes the view data, underlying view, is not updated with your changes, even though the back end is. And finally, I've got some resources here. So there is a amazing trail. Well, this is Trailhead DX. So there's an amazing trail for Visualforce in Lightning that I recommend everyone run through it. I don't think anyone should be developing without reading or referencing the Visualforce Developer Guide. And since we talk a lot about Lightning components for Visualforce, and I think it's a good way to fix a lot of issues with pages, look and feel and functionality, there's a link for Lightning components in Visualforce. And if you're going to be using Lightning components for Visualforce, you want to know about Lightning components and how to develop them. So the Lightning components developer guide there's a link there. And then finally, I said there were some unsupported components, especially in the mobile app, and there's a link to that as well. Yes, make sure you give us your feedback for the session, and I thank you all for coming, and we will take questions from you now. There's microphones, yeah, in the...
Hey, so I've had great luck with Lightning Out for Visualforce when I've made my own components.
Okay.
But when I'm using like base components that do more complicated things, like the file upload component, a lot of those just don't work without that supporting container.
Interesting.
I know it may not be your team, but do you know anything about pushing for like consistency and everything working?
Are these components, you mean components from the App Exchange, or do you mean like components that we develop?
Base Lightning namespace global components, like file upload, etc.
Okay. Have you followed the case for that? Because this is the first time I'm hearing about it.
Every time I file a case, it gets turned into a dot bug, and they edit the dots saying it's only supported.
All right, yeah, we'll look at that. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. I have a question that in our org, we are using a lot of console apps. So we use that console integration toolkit. So we have noticed that on VF pages, wherever we have used this integration JS, the console integration toolkit, the navigation like opening primary tab, or opening sub tab, those are not working. So is there a fix for that?
Right, so that's not officially, yeah, go ahead.
Is it Lightning console or Classic console?
So in Lightning console, when we turn on the Lightning experience, navigations for
Yeah, if your Visualforce page has an API version 42 and up, then some of those navigation methods in console should work. So maybe you should check on the API as well.
So you're saying that integration...
Integration toolkit will work if your Visualforce page has an API version 42 and over. And also the integration, whatever, toolkit version 42 and over.
Yes.
And you can also look at the workspace API methods for Lightning console. That should work as well.
Right. And I just did the API version of the page. So when Salesforce releases new, every release,
So
your API version isn't out.
Yeah, so I tried changing the integration JS version to 42, but I did not change the VF page version. So that could be the reason, because I still don't see that.
I think it's both.
Yeah, change both.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I got a question. You might have answered this already, but we're kind of transitioning between Classic and Lightning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's enabled, but it's not set to that. So you can go there if you want. I was wondering if I got a page, if I put that Lightning sheets equal true, is that going to screw up the Classic, or is there a dynamic way to?
No, I meant to say that. No. So it will only affect the styling when you're in Lightning experience.
Okay.
So for your Classic users, nothing. It will be a no op. Yeah.
Okay.
Everything will be styled with Classic.
Okay.
Great question. Sorry, should have said that. Thanks.
I've noticed that when in Lightning mode in setup, some random ones of the standard built-in Salesforce setup pages still have the classic styling. It looks kind of weird.
Yes.
So now that you've got this, is there like an active plan to like unify that or bring that over?
That's definitely something we're considering, yes.
Yeah.
It's a slow but
That's
sure
a good
process.
point. Yeah, I see it all the time too. And it sticks out like a sore thumb. I agree. Yeah.
I have a classic article knowledge base, and article management isn't available in Lightning because of the old interfaces. It's similar to his. I mean, what I think it's surfacing old interfaces into Lightning is why we see those stylings. So I'm curious if article management is going to be available for classic knowledge in Lightning without doing a forklift upgrade to Lightning knowledge.
That might be a
Knowledge
knowledge
question,
question,
yeah, sorry.
but yeah, I'll definitely kind of share that with the PM.
Is that right? No, not, oh, interesting. I can research, I know someone on the knowledge team. I will do some research.
It's a big classic knowledge base, and we have it in a Lightning community, and it works really well that way. But the Lightning knowledge doesn't support multilingual, and I'm about to do 7-language translation for all of our major article types.
Okay.
So it's a big forklift upgrade.
Yeah.
There was going to be a migration path, but that's still not available.
Okay. How can he follow up with us?
I can actually check.
All right.
Yeah, I'll check with
Thanks.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of issues recently with the spring release and the Peely screwing up our formatting,
Okay.
the step lists and the numbered lists. And I had cases with Salesforce, and then they just barely released a patch that fixed everything.
And they're, what are they doing with the cases?
They just got a patch release
Oh.
that fixed
Okay.
the styling issues in the
Okay.
Peely
Oh, okay.
Lightning community template.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.